If you're on a weight loss journey and you're interested in picking up running as a sport to lose weight, to burn belly fat, and to get lean, then stick around because I want to share with you some of the downsides of running during your weight loss journey that I just think that a lot of people don't talk about and don't consider before they actually jump into the sport of running. Now, if you're new here, I'm Ursula. I lost 70 pounds in 9 months. After losing the 70 pounds, I ended up having a tummy tuck to remove loose skin around my abdomen because it was impacting my running. And then I went on to lose an additional 16 pounds training for a marathon. So as you can see, running has been a critical component to my weight loss as well as my weight maintenance. In fact, I actually started running many years ago during a prior weight loss journey. I used running to bust through a plateau. I was at about 190 pounds and I was actually on the verge of a regain when I started to run, and I ended up losing about an additional 30 pounds. So this time around on my weight loss journey, I knew that if I could get back to running, that I could lose the weight again, and I could continue running and I could keep the weight off. In fact, watch this video because I recorded this just 2 months into my weight loss journey, and I talk about my actual goal for this weight loss journey. I'm in the weight room this morning, getting it in. My goal is just to start running again. I want to get back to a comfortable weight where I can start running again. Now, I will admit that running actually helps you to burn fat and lean out very quickly. It's one of those sports where if you keep it up, you absolutely will burn the fat and lose the weight. But one of the things that I don't think people talk about enough when it comes to running for weight loss is to remember that anything that you do during your weight loss journey, you also have to do in the weight maintenance phase. And so you don't want to go to the extremes when it comes to running for weight loss, because you won't be able to keep it up in the weight maintenance phase. And I will give you an example of that. In my intro, I said that I lost an additional 16 pounds training for a marathon. Now, a marathon is a 26.2 mile foot race. And in order to train for that marathon, I had to do 18 weeks of training over the summer. And during the course of marathon training, week 1, you might be running 10 to 15 miles a week. By the time you get down to weeks 10, 11, 12, 13, you're running 30, 35, 40. You get to the end of marathon training, you're up to 45, 50 miles a week. So it was no surprise to me that over the course of 18 weeks of marathon training, I lost 16 pounds. I was always in a severe caloric deficit because I was doing this extreme amount of running. But I knew that I was not going to be able to keep that weight off post-marathon training. Why? Because I was going to be significantly decreasing my volume of mileage after the marathon. And guess what happened once the marathon was over? I went back to training for 5Ks and 10Ks, which doesn't require me to run 45 miles a week. And I started to regain some of that weight. So just keep in mind that you don't want to go to the extremes when it comes for running, especially if your goal is weight loss, because whatever you do during the weight loss phase, you have to keep up during the weight maintenance phase. And if you can't keep it up during the weight maintenance phase, the weight will just come back on. Another downside of using running for weight loss, and something that I don't think a lot of people really consider, is that you burn so many calories when you are running, and especially if you're doing any type of high mileage running, you're training for road races, and so you're running on a consistent basis. It requires so much in terms of fuel. It requires you to eat because you need the energy in order to sustain those runs. And it can be very difficult sometimes to get that fueling right. I mentioned that last year I lost 16 pounds training for that marathon because it was my first time training for a marathon, and I just was not eating enough, to be quite honest. And that is the reason why I lost the 16 pounds. Now, what I will tell you is that people believe that, you know, when you train for a marathon, yes, you should lose weight. And so I lost weight training for this marathon. That was what was supposed to happen. What usually happens is that most people start to gain weight, especially when they're doing workouts like training for marathons over a long period of time. Your body just requires so much fuel in order to sustain your workouts, in order to sustain those runs. And it can be very difficult sometimes to figure out exactly what your body needs in terms of fuel so that you're actually losing healthy weight and not gaining weight by running. It sounds very counterintuitive, especially if you are using running as a way to lose weight, but you have to eat so much more in order to sustain those runs. And sometimes it can be very hard to get the right amount of fuel that you need in order to lose healthy weight and not gain weight in the process. Another downside that I have found to using running as a mechanism for weight loss is sometimes we can get so wrapped up in the running piece of it because it's a strenuous workout that we tend to skip on the strength training. And as we get older, we absolutely need the strength training because we need to preserve our muscle mass. As we get older, we're steadily losing our muscle mass and we need this muscle on our bodies. It is so important that we maintain our muscles. And you know, I found myself doing this last year. When I was training for the marathon, I had gotten to the point where I was running so much I didn't have the time or the energy to strength train. And what typically happens in those cases is you're doing all this cardio, you're not doing any strength training, you're gonna lean out, but you're also gonna look what is called skinny fat. And that is where you are very, very thin, you're very lean, but you have no muscle mass on your body whatsoever. Now, when I lost the 16 pounds training for the marathon, I could look at myself in the mirror and tell that I had lost some muscle mass. I knew that part of that 16-pound weight loss was muscle loss, and it was simply because I was doing so much less strength training because I was doing so much running. And so just keep in mind that one of the downsides of running for weight loss is that it is very difficult sometimes to find the balance between running and strength training, but it is so very important that you don't skip out on the strength training. You cannot pick up running for weight loss and completely skip the strength training. In fact, if you are going to run for weight loss, then you absolutely positively need to strength train as well in order to preserve your muscle. Because if not, and you're doing endurance running, you're doing high volume running, you're just gonna start to eat away at that precious muscle that is so hard to build as we get older. Another thing to keep in mind when you are considering using running as a way to lose weight is that it does take a physical toll on your body. Running is a high impact sport. It is very unforgiving on your joints. It is very unforgiving on your feet, on your knees. And so you really have to take into consideration what are the trade-offs. Another aspect that we don't really talk about is the mental fatigue. So not only does it take a toll on your body, you're out there pounding your joints, you know, every day, getting in these runs, but it also takes a mental toll as well, especially if you're doing constant training cycles. If you have gotten bitten by the IG running influencer bug and you want to get out there and you want to train for, you know, the 5Ks and the 10Ks and the half marathons and the marathons, there is a lot of work that goes on behind the scene to make those wonderful IG reels that you see. That's the highlight reel, right? But nobody really shows you the work, the constant running day in and day out that it takes in order to make that highlight reel, that one, you know, 4 hour or however long it is road race. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. Again, I ran a marathon last year, 4 hours and 45 minutes, but it took 18 weeks of training in order to do that. That takes a mental toll on you. And so just keep that in mind as well. If you decide that you're going to pick up running for weight loss, but you're also going to pursue it, you're going to pursue the sport of running, that there is not only the physical aspect of it where it's very hard on your body, but there's also the mental aspect as well, where you just can mentally fatigue yourself with the work that goes into being an endurance runner. You know, one of the things that I really love about running, in addition to the fact that it, helped me to not only lose the weight, but also to keep the weight off in my weight maintenance phase, is that it is a sport that comes with the community. And that is a great thing, because as runners, we feed off of each other. But that can also be a downside as well. I am about to run my second marathon, and I signed up for this second marathon. I hadn't even ran the first marathon yet, but I was feeding off of all of the influencers on IG who had just ran the Chicago Marathon last year. And I was like, you know what? I want to run the Chicago Marathon. So here I am signing up for the second marathon. I hadn't even ran the first marathon yet. And so I run the first marathon, and the first thing I do is I look into the camera and I say this: I am never, ever doing that again. Now, keep in mind, I am already signed up for my second marathon. And so the thing that makes running so great for weight loss and that whole sense of community is also one of the downsides of it, because you can certainly get addicted not only to the feeling of running and the accomplishments of running, but you can also get addicted to that FOMO, or the fear of missing out, and wanting to be a part of the community and doing what the community does. And again, it kind of all goes back to, it takes a beating on your body to keep up. It takes a beating on your mind sometimes to keep up. And I wonder, would I be running this second marathon if I hadn't committed to it last year, because I saw everybody else having a great time doing so. So just keep those things in mind if you are a beginner runner, or you are thinking about picking up running as a way to lose weight and to lean out. It is certainly great for that purpose, but there are some downsides, and you have to consider them. You have to be able to find the balance that is perfect for you. Otherwise, you're going to burn yourself out and you're just going to quit, and we don't want that. If this video has been helpful to you, take a moment and give it a thumbs up so that I know that you like this type of content, and I will continue to make more of it. And if you haven't joined the Get Fit community yet, take a moment and hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you here as part of the Get Fit community. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.